sushi train is?
A sushi train?
Sushi train.
No, I'm not familiar with the term sushi train.
We just got one in Philadelphia. The first time I experienced this, it was actually in Tokyo, and my family and I fell in love with it. Well, it's a type of restaurant, and you sit down, and there's like a conveyor belt that winds its way all around the restaurant, and it carries little saucer-sized plates of food that are covered in a little plastic bubble. And as the train goes by your table, if you see something that you'd like, you hit a little button, the cover pops up, you grab the dish, and you have what you want to eat.
This is magical.
If you want to order, oh my gosh, the one in Philly, the drinks come out via a robot that carries your little drinks. And if you want to order something special, like maybe some ramen or something like that, you can order something special. It's got a specialized track that just brings the thing that you ordered to your table so that you can pick it up. But basically, it's like sitting by a conveyor belt full of food, and you just keep pulling the ones that you want.
Okay, first of all, this is magical. Second of all, no, I've never done this. But thirdly, doesn't this kind of remind you of, remember in the 1950s, so post-war America, remember in New York train stations, they would have those special things that were like called... Automats, yes.
Yep.
Will you describe what an automat was for people?
It was a big bank. It was basically a big vending machine, but you saw little doors. You could see what was inside through a window. You put the coin in, the door opened, and you grabbed the thing and took it out.
And it was like there were a lot of sandwiches and stuff like that, right?
And
like
pies and stuff like that.
Pies, yes, yeah.
This is one step better because you don't have to move at all. You just sit down and the food comes right to you.
It comes right to you. That's
the only thing is, what you start doing is you watch what like the food that's coming out of the kitchen. And if you're sitting behind somebody that really likes sushi, they keep taking the stuff that you want before it gets to you. You can get a little bit irate. But I'm telling you, it's our favorite thing. And this is brilliant, by the way. They've got a system where, of course, everything comes on a little saucer-sized plate, right?
Right.
Well, if every time you eat something off the plate, you don't sit there and let the plates pile up.
No.
There's a little slot in your table. You put the table down the slot, and it has a little river inside there that carries your dirty plates away.
I'm sorry. Can you say what word that was again? A river?
A river. It's like a water trough that's got running water through it. You can't get your hands wet, but because it's got a little slot. You put it in the slot, and a counter counts every plate, and that's how you pay. You pay by the plate. So not only does the waiter come up at the very end and total up all the plates that were counted, but every 15 plates, you get a little toy that comes out from above. What? Down a little chute, and then you get a little reward for eating 15 plates of sushi.
This is the most gamified thing I've ever heard.
You end up eating way more than you planned to because, like, you want to get the next toy, and of course, the toys get better as you go higher, right? The 30 plate toy is better than the 15 plate. So my family and I are sitting here gorging ourselves on sushi. We're kind of slowing down by 25 plates, but at that point it's like we can't get within 5 plates of the next toy. So we're eating every more because we want to get that next little plastic toy that comes down. It's the most brilliant concept ever.
So I'm just going to say, and this is going out exclusively to Brad's dietitian.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, Brad got the iPad Touch, so he unfortunately ate a little bit too much on the getting to the toy level there. He got a new iPod or a new iPad there. And on that note, I'm going to say hello, everybody, and welcome to Comic Lab, the show about eating too much sushi and making comics.
And eating too much sushi and making a living from comics. I'm Brad Geiger, the author of the Webcomics Handbook and the creator of Evil Inc.
And I'm his pal Dave Kellett, cartoonist of Drive, and Sheldon and co-director of the comics documentary Stripped.
And this week's Hour of Comics Advice is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So Dave, Let's talk comics.
Let's talk comics, my friend. And we have probably our biggest show of the year for folks new and old. This is our How to Start a Webcomic in 2026 episode.
Yeah.
And Brad and I have had a huge, long discussion before this show aired, taping, going over point by point everything we need to know, you need to know on how to start a webcomic in the coming year, Brad.
Yeah, this is going out especially to our friends listening at home that want to start out a comic in the new year. You haven't done it much before. You're thinking, hey, maybe this will be something I do. And we've got a guide for you that is special for this year because, as you know, things change every year. Things that were popular a couple of years ago are not so popular now. We've got our guide to really get you started off on the right foot, and it's got 5 sections.
Yes.
And actually, the first section is getting off on the right foot.
So we've got getting off on the right foot. In case the folks are taking notes at home, I'm going to give you the subheadings so that you can take great notes like a good professor would do for you. We're going to give you the subheadings. Section number 1 is going to be getting off on the right foot.
Yeah.
Section number 2 is going to be building an audience. Section number 3, monetization. Section number 4, marathon thinking and how that plays into your comics. And then a final 5th section that is just our final thought. And it's our primary thought on sending you off into 2026 into your cartooning journey. So, Brad, let's jump in right on to getting off on the right foot, Brad. What do we recommend?
Yeah, this is one that we wanted to talk about right off the top because Dave and I, to give you a little background on us, we're both cartoonists with about 25 years experience apiece, 26 now going into the new year. We've been doing this for a long time. We've been podcasting. This is our 9th year of podcasting. We've written books together. We do a lot of outreach. And back in the day, we did a lot of comic conventions, which we're going to talk about coming up here
we're
as
friends, pals. That's what you need to know. We're friends.
And we hear a lot from people that want to do comics.
Yes.
We hear so many. In fact, a lot of this, I'd say 80% of this is from us talking to newcomers and hearing a lot of the same things from them, a lot of their same concerns.
Yes.
Watching them about to make the same mistakes.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So this is one of those things. We see it happen all the time. We want to warn you about, and it's this. Don't try to game your readership. Write about what you like. Readers are drawn to a creator's passion, and it doesn't work the other way around.
That's right.
So what we're saying here is a lot of people are like, zombies are very popular right now. I'm going to do a zombie comic. And if you're not really passionate about zombies, that comic is going nowhere. And we saw this in the very beginning of webcomics. In the early 2000s, everybody was trying to do a video game commentary comic, right? Like Penny Arcade and PvP. There was a lot of that. And everybody tried to do that. There was only one problem with that. Some of them were very good about it because they were actually passionate about video games, and other people not so much, and they failed miserably.
Yeah, I mean, the worst case scenario is Brad's intimating here, not intimidating, as he's intimating here is that you're like, oh, you know what's huge right now is Bitcoin investing. I'm going to do a comic about Bitcoin investing. Meanwhile, you don't know anything about Bitcoin investing and you're not passionate about it. So it's neither coming from your heart or from your own lived experience. So it ends up being the worst possible, kludged together comic. And so that's why Brad is saying, don't try to game your readership. Don't try to game the audience that you think is out there. Write from your passion, write from your heart.
And this is really important for you. But if you think your idea isn't going to be popular, or if you think your idea or your concept isn't good enough, you'll be amazed. You could take this thing that you think is a super niche, is something that not too many people are interested in. You could do crocheting, and there's actually a lot of people interested in crocheting, but you could say, okay, I want to do a comic about crocheting. Well, you could talk yourself out of that idea because you don't see a lot of crocheting comics out there. But I guarantee you, if you are passionate about that subject and start writing to that audience that is also passionate about it the way you are, there's nothing that's too small of a niche to be unsuccessful on the web. In other words, what you'll find out is you're not as niche as you thought. There's a whole community of people who are going to love your comics about crochet because let's face it, nobody's really servicing that community that I know of. There might be a very fine crochet comic out there, but you see what I'm trying to get at. Nothing is too small. You're going to find out that this thing that you think that only you could possibly be interested in, you'll find out that A, there's a whole lot more people interested in it. It's not just you. And B, people are going to be drawn to your passion. They might not. Yeah. There's so many comics that are like that. And maybe you too, Dave, where it's a niche that I don't even really particularly have a real appreciation for, but I'm constantly drawn by their passion.
Yes,
I just love seeing them talk excitedly about what they're doing.
And so you don't get the wrong idea from this and write down in your notebook, got it, Brad and Dave say I should write a theme that's passionate to me. We're not necessarily saying pick a niche. We're just saying that write from your passion. And here's what we mean by that. Do you remember in high school, Brad, or in college, people would be like, they'd try to adopt a new persona. Like freshman year, you'd be like, from now on, I'm Chip. And Chip wears, this kind of a sweater. And don't call me Dave anymore. I'm Chip now, that kind of thing. What we're saying is basically be yourself. And writing from your heart, writing from your passion is actually the strongest way to get people to resonate with you, because people respond, because we are all social creatures. We respond to people that write well and write passionately about things that they love and find interesting. So lean in on that. And so I'm going to jump us into our second point, Brad, which is building readership. Now, building readership as you're starting, this is something that takes time and consistency. Do not expect this process to be an overnight 3-week, 6-month thing. This is going to take some time. So you need to be in these early months and frankly, in these early years, creating for love. That's essential in the early years. And that's partially why Brad and I say, write what you love, write what you are passionate about, write what your emotions draw you to, because you're kind of only going to have that in the first couple months, in the first couple years. In the beginning, it's just going to be you and your passion. The readers are going to come later, right? And so you can't get too disappointed when you're following your follower numbers on social media and all the other metrics that you're right now probably a little too interested in. Yes. Right? Yeah. That number is not going to move much in the beginning unless you're one of these magical people who capture lightning in a bottle. And if that is you, great. But here's the sad, sorry truth about being a creator in today's marketplace is that most of us, even those of us among us who seem like they were an overnight success, took 10 or 20 years before that just to get to the point where they could become an overnight success. There was a whole bunch of stuff that you didn't see. Right. And just because you just discovered this person last week doesn't mean that there wasn't 10 years before that they were building their skills up to this point. So you've got to do it for love in the beginning, because the readers aren't going to come for a while. And by the way, that's okay. In fact, I look back on my early days and I kind of wish that I hadn't gotten or that the readers had come a little bit later, because the first couple of years of stuff that I did wasn't that great. And the people who discovered me then discovered me at my worst. Right. And so I had to win those people back. If I ever won them back at all later on when my skills improved, right now you should be just focusing on doing a good comic and doing a better comic. And honest to goodness, don't get distracted by your follower count. Yeah, and just to build on what Brad just said there, one of the things we say about the early months and the early years that actually is beneficial, even though it sounds like we're talking down to you and being condescending, there is a joy in stumbling and failing and cutting your teeth in obscurity, right? Yes. Like you don't want 10,000 people coming on day one. You want it to just be your mom and your cousin, because you can kind of cut your teeth. And so there is something nice about that. But we'll move on to point number 3, Brad. And so point number 3, and this really is along the lines of helping you get better. Because here's the thing. All of us are excited, especially when we first start our comic. And we think we're doing great work because we're so excited about it. It's easy to lose track of how to improve. So, and again,
Dave and I have been doing this for a long, long time. We've seen a lot of people come and go. Here's one thing that we can tell you unequivocally is accurate, and we don't even know who you are. Your writing needs to improve. Focus on your writer.
Yes.
We say on the show all the time, they're called comics readers, not comics lookers. And if you're like most of us, almost, I'd say 80% of us, came to comics as artists first. We were drawn to the visual aspect of this kind of storytelling. Mm-hmm. And we assume that it's all about the art. And if you look at if you go to a bookstore or go to Amazon and bring up books on how to do comics, you'll see that most of them focus on the art. Why?
Right.
Because it's a lot easier to talk about. It's harder to talk about writing. It's easier to say, draw a circle. Now here's where the eyes go, and here's where, and now meet me over in chapter 2. All that mechanical stuff is very easy to talk about. Not so easy to do all the time, but it's easy to talk about. That's why all these books on how to do comics focus on art instead of writing. Writing is a lot harder to pin down, but your readers are there for the writing. They want good writing. And the thing that's going to get you more readers and improve your audience building is when you improve your writing.
Right. So just to underline that again, they're called comics readers, not comics lookers. Although I do want to differentiate the fact that, ladies and gentlemen, Brad Geiger is a comics looker. Let me tell you. Form an orderly line.
Let's talk about some of those comics lookers.
So now I'm going to talk about mistakes. Okay. So early in the process, you're going to make mistakes. That is okay. That is natural. You'll make mistakes in the way you craft your comics. You'll make the mistakes in the way you write your comics. You'll make mistakes in posting and marketing and all the things that we're going to talk about. So mistakes in the early stages, though, here's the great news. They are recoverable. So stop fretting over them. None of them are world-endingly bad unless you sign some contract right out the bat that locks you in for something stupid. That is something to avoid. But
that's a mistake.
All the mistakes that you can make in a world that you are building and crafting and sharing in a way that you are controlling, all of those are recoverable. I could list out 400 mistakes that I made early in Drive, early in Sheldon, and I could tell you 400 mistakes that Brad made early on with Evil Inc. or with Greystone Inn. We both have shared many of those publicly as a way of paying it forward. But what we're truly saying here, the core message is these things are recoverable. Don't let mistakes or the fear of mistakes stop you from sharing your comics.
Yeah, it's such a big thing. And here's the other part of what Dave just talked about. Mistakes is how you learn.
Yes.
Mistakes. You need to make mistakes right now. This is the time for you to make mistakes. This is a time for you to take risk, make mistakes, learn from them, grow from them. I learned so much about comics by kind of making mistakes along the way. I talk about this all the time. In my first comic, I ended up having 3 mad scientist characters. Because every time I needed a mad scientist, I'd go I'm going to do one based on
You'd have
Fly.
fun with it. Yeah, you'd get creative and
And then I'd be, you know what I should do? I should do Vincent Price too. And then I should do, the old brain in a jar. I ended up with 3 different mad scientists. When I went and rebooted the comic, I had to wipe all of that clean and just go with one because it made for real clunky storytelling to have 3 characters that were all doing the same purpose. But I needed to make that mistake. And what I see a lot of times, especially with younger creators who feel like they're very exposed on social media when they're posting their work early on, is that they don't want to make a mistake. I don't want to do this and make a mistake. I don't want to, even from not only the comic part, but the presentation on social media, that audience building, they're very cautious. And cautious is no way to learn. Cautious is no way to be a creative person in general, but they're scared of making that mistake. What we're going to tell you is do the opposite. Make lots of mistakes right now. This is the time to make oodles of mistakes. There's not a single one of them that is going to follow you through a appreciable level of career building. They're all going to melt away. And just get used to this. This is actually a superpower. This is good news. Doesn't sound like good news, but it is good news. people are not paying that close attention to you.
No, they're not. They really are not.
We cartoonists make so many mistakes when we think people are paying attention. They're not paying attention. You can make tons of mistakes. Nobody can remember anything on social media past 2 weeks. There's a lot of really important things that we need to remember that we've forgotten about because it happened more than 2 weeks ago. Make your mistakes. It's okay.
Although, gang, I will say this as a friend, and Brad just said no one's paying that close attention to your mistakes. Yeah. I'm paying so much attention to all his mistakes. I could tell you.
I can confirm.
I have a full list, a Google Doc that I'm willing to share with anyone of all the mistakes that it's made over the years. No. All right. So let's jump us into the next topic, which is copyright, because this section, remember, is getting off on the right foot. And a lot of people, I'll be honest, their fears of copyright keep them from sharing their webcomic publicly and online and all this sort of stuff. And the common fear is like, I'm afraid that if I put this comic out, Disney is going to steal it. Boy, what an appropriate voice that I used by accident there. Oh, boy. Oh, I'm so afraid that Mickey's going to steal it. No, but the honest to God fear is everyone has this fear when they first start. Oh, I'm going to share my webcomic, and Brad, some big corporation is going to come in and swoop and steal my webcomic.
And it happens. So there are lightning strike occurrences where you find out somebody has been, done dirty by someone else or some corporation. But by and large, you're going to be okay. You own the copyright to your work the moment you post it. Okay. That's just, if you look up copyright law, that is a
at the moment of creation, you own it. Actually,
you own that work, okay, and no one can make a copy of it without you giving them the right. That's what copyright is.
Exactly.
It's the right to make a copy. We always encourage you to put a copyright notation on your work, okay, and that's just covering your bases. That's just basically signaling to the world that you know what your work is and what it's worth. But all of that stuff is in place. All of that stuff is there to protect you. The real danger of misunderstanding copyright is what Dave said, is to let yourself be scared away from posting things or from sharing things because you're scared it's going to get stolen from you. We can say this very confidently. It's very unlikely to happen. And if it does, if you have a good standing in what you've created, you will be able to stand up for your rights.
And listen, because I have it too as an artist, I have catastrophic thinking too, where a creative brain can think of the worst possible thing that's going to happen. And so I also have catastrophic thinking when I was younger and was worried about copyright. Oh, Brad, these corporations are going to steal from me. So as Brad just said, there's three, with the caveat that Brad and I are not lawyers and you should consult a copyright book for artists. But as Brad was saying, there's 3 levels of basic copyright protection. Number 1 is from the moment of creation in the United States, it is your copyright. Secondly, when you declare it on the art itself, when it has a copyright notification underneath it, copyright 2026, Brad Guigar, bang, that's the second level of protection. Third, you can file a piece of art with the Copyright Office. Now, the only reason I'm mentioning this third level is because some people go to extremes and they're like, well, does that mean I have to file every comic strip with the Copyright Office? No, obviously those filings at, $70, $85 a pop, that would get really expensive. What you can do is with your first book collection, file that with the Copyright Office if you want. Brad and I would agree that that's a commonsensical thing to do. But those are the 3 basic levels of copyright protection. Number 1, at the moment of creation, you have a legal right to your work. Secondly, with a declaration on the work itself, publicly visible, copyright 2026, Brad Guigar. Third is filing it with the Copyright Office. Again, with the caveat that we are not lawyers, that's the basic levels of protection. But don't let the fear, that's the underlying thing, don't let the fear of being stolen from keep you from sharing your work.
As we round out the first section of getting started off on the right foot, you've heard us say an awful lot about, oh, don't worry about this, don't worry about that, right? We've kind of done a lot of a talk that tells you some of your worries were unfounded or might be perfectly fair worries, but they're going to stall you out and keep you from creating. Here's one thing that we're going to ask you to take very, very seriously. And it's something you're going to hear on this show. If you listen to any of the episodes that we've recorded before this, or any of the many ones that are coming up after this, you're going to hear us say this a lot because it's so important. You need to own and control your own work.
Yes.
It is so important that you understand what that means.
It's a fundamental and core concept to how Brad and I have continued to be professional cartoonists going on decades now, and why a lot of our friends and peers from early on, just as much talent, just as much writing, have stumbled along the way, is because they didn't own and control their own work. So what do we mean by that? That means, as we intimated before, not stumbling into a contract where you're accidentally signing away the rights or the control of this or that aspect of your comic, like the Webtoons contract, or like a small publisher that's a little too grabby with this or that. You need to read and understand and have a lawyer review anything that you sign up for or sign with before you jump into it, because a lot of these are sort of abdications of things that you should be owning and controlling as you get off on the right foot with your comic.
Yeah. And it's something that you're going to need to work on your understanding of how this stuff works in general, because there are some, for example, this happens if you're going to be a comics artist or any kind of creative person on social media. You're going to see this happen a ton of times. It just happened last week. In fact, I put a little section about it in the Comic Lab newsletter. Twitter updated its terms of service, and somebody went out there and read a terms of service contract for the first time. This happens all the time. Went running to social media to say, oh my God, Twitter is giving themselves a irrevocable rights to all of the copyright to all of your work forever, and they can change it and make money off of it, and there's nothing you can do about it. It happens all the time. None of that is accurate. In fact, if you look at all of the social media platforms, they all give themselves certain rights to take and duplicate and copyright and rework your work. Why? Because they need to legally give themselves that right so that they can take that thing that you uploaded and change it so that now it fits a mobile screen, and change it so now that it's appropriate for desktop, and change it so that they can use it in, like, if it's trending or something, right? They need to give themselves certain rights. But people who have never read a terms of service contract go into it for the first time, they see those words and they spread massive amounts of panic for absolutely no reason.
Right. So I'm going to say that, listen, this is not something you necessarily need to learn right away, because remember, you're getting off on the right foot, but you're not going to sign anything for that first year or two anyway. Yes. But in time, you want to slowly familiarize yourself with the sections of a contract and what it means to have a scope of work or payment terms or copyright ownership or a termination clause or confidentiality agreements, or if a contract ever uses the word permanent or irrevocable.
Yes.
And why those are dangerous for an artist. So in time, and definitely before you actually sign a goddamn thing, you're going to want to learn those terms, but it's not something you have to do in the first step. But for God's sake, it is something you have to familiarize yourself with before you sign anything.
Yeah. And if you don't know what the words work for hire or work made for hire means in a legal contract, don't sign that contract. You have to understand what these words mean. Okay.
Yeah. And if you don't, hire a lawyer. That's the other version of this.
Yes. Hire a lawyer. So that thing, owning and controlling your own work, that we're very serious about. Making a mistake where you do a lettering mistake in your first couple of comics, that I'm not worried about. Right. Owning and controlling, that you need to keep an eye on. And we'll try to highlight as we go through these 2026 starting off rules. What's an okay thing to goof on and what's not to goof on. Yeah. Signing away your rights is something we do not mess around with in the most Midwestern way possible. As Brad always says, we are serious as a heart attack about that. Do not sign away your rights and your control and your ownership of your comic. All right. So now, Brad, we're jumping into the whole big subsection number 2 about building your audience. Take us into that world, Brad. And the first thing we need to assuage your fears on, because we see this all the time, and it's so not true. People assume that they need to be on Webtoons or Tapas. Tapas is another one that comes up quite a bit, but they just take it for granted that the only place that there are people who read comics online is Webtoons. That's the only place they could possibly build an audience. And it's just not true. It is so provably not true. You're talking to two guys that are full-time cartoonists and have been for like 10 years plus. We're making our full-time living from this. Neither one of us are on Webtoons. In fact, we got as far away from that as possible. Part of that was looking at the contract. Also, part of it was this, and I'm going to ask you to do the same thing. Take a look at your comic and then take a look at the front page of Webtoons. Take a look at the front page of Tapas or any other platform that you want to judge for that matter. Does your comic look like those comics? Does your comic read like those comics? Does it have the same concepts, the same ideas, the same storylines that those comics do? If not, it's very clear you are not going to be successful there. Those readers have a very certain notion for what they like. And if you're not that, you're not going to succeed there and you're wasting your time trying. And there are other places to build readership. Dave and I promise you, there are other places, good places, really good places that you can build your readership. You do not need to be on Webtoon.
It's a little bit akin to joining a fraternity or a sorority. People will think, oh, I'll instantly have 50 friends, right?
Yeah.
And people think that if they join Webtoons, oh, I'll instantly have an audience. Well, first of all, there's a lie to that, as Brad just said, based on your work. But even if you have, let's say, a romance comic in a manga style, which we can all agree is the big heavy hitter in the Webtoons platform, even if you have that, I still would advise you against not joining Webtoons for all the reasons I mentioned before about having lawyers review a contract, and what they would point out to you is in the Webtoons contract. Phrases like permanent or irrevocability or irrevocable. There are things in there that should be little red flags to you. I am not a lawyer, but I will advise you to get one before you sign that. And yes, clicking a thing on a website is the same as signing in ink a contract. That is a contract that you're signing when you join up with Webtoons. So I will just say, in the long term and even in the short term, it is far, far better for you to build and own and control your own audience and your own comic by doing it the way we suggest and not necessarily jumping in on one of these platforms.
Yeah, and you don't need to. Again, the one thing that you're convinced of, if you're like most people I talk to, that you need to do this at the only place that you could possibly be, it's just not true. And I'm telling you, we've been there through it all. I can tell you, I know where you can build lots of readers, and none of them have anything to do with Webtoon and Tapas. One of them that you can start to build your audience on is social media. Now, social media has changed a lot since it's crested in like the 2010s and 2015. It's very different than it was then, but this is still a place that you need to work to start your audience building. My own personal, I don't know whether you agree with this, Dave. If I were starting out on my own comic, I would not try to do all of the platforms, first of all, because you're not doing any of them well if you're doing all of them. Each one of those platforms, whether it's Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Blue Sky, they each have their community expectations for how you post stuff. And if you're just hitting one button and it goes out to all these different platforms, you're not doing any of them right, first of all. So you're not going to get good response from it. But if I were focused right now on building, I would be looking at Blue Sky and Reddit. Reddit, which I've had a renaissance with. That we can go over that. I talked about it in an earlier episode. But I would be focused on Reddit and Blue Sky for social media. What do you think, Dave?
First of all, it's always delightful to see the renaissance that Brad has had on Reddit. Because for a couple years there, you're like, to hell with that platform. I hated it. And just so everybody knows, that's natural because not everything is going to work for you all the time. So we should say that as sort of a growing strategy, is that you should be reassessing what's working for you and not working for you year to year and month to month. And Brad is reassessing Reddit and found it to be very effective. I will say, because a lot of people are having success with it, We could ostensibly include Substack in this list because it's working for a lot of authors and a lot of web cartoonists.
Yeah.
But Brad and I personally are having some hesitations on their content control and what they're allowing on the platform. We're hoping that will come in time to be resolved. It doesn't seem like it's going to be. We're reassessing as we go. But yes, both Brad and I can super co-sign Blue Sky and Reddit, the subreddit specifically of R Comics, and to a lesser extent, R Funny, which allows Sunday postings and Thursday postings, I think.
I think it's Sunday and Wednesday.
Oh, yeah. So anyway, but yes, big cosign on my part.
So here's a couple things that we don't feel very good about directing people towards in terms of audience building. Neither one of us is ever going to tell you that you should start building an audience on Instagram. That's a non-starter for us for a very simple reason.
Well, listen, I and many others have found that you can build a sizable audience on Instagram and not do a dang thing with it because you can't get them off the platform. You can't monetize them in any way. You can't mobilize them in a way other than that it's a pittance, a percentage of your followership. I think, Brad, one of the most damning things was I had at the time 40 or 50,000 followers on Instagram, and I got, what was it, 2 people to come to my Kickstarter from Instagram because that's how much Instagram throttled it. Listen, we also will say the same for Facebook. We'll say the same for Threads. We'll say the same for the people that think they can build a followership on LinkedIn, God knows why, or on Mastodon or Pillow Fort or any of these other ones. It's there is just not there. It's not going to work for you in the way that you want. Yeah.
And the only reason we don't single Twitter out is because Twitter does allow you to put links on a post. But again, we both got the heck off of Twitter a year ago, over a year now, because we were not seeing any efficacy out of posting there. In other words, we would do Kickstarters, we would do tracking links, we would do all kinds of things to see, hey, when I talk about my Patreon, am I getting people across? Am I talking, when I talk about a Kickstarter, are they coming from Twitter? Both of us had decent sized Twitter followings. Twitter did not perform.
It didn't perform.
Year after year after year. Didn't perform.
And was getting worse.
Yes. And so we got rid of it. And didn't hurt us a bit. Nope. Did not slow us down. We both went from posting on, I think at one point, Dave, I was up to maybe 10 or 12 different platforms that I was trying to track. I've cut down to 2, and my business has never been better. And again, not on Webtoons, not on Tapas. I've got lots of readers for the stuff that I do, and I don't have to do all that stuff that you're told when you're starting out that you need to do. But what I do is focus on the quality of my comic and focus on good audience building strategies. Now, if you'd like to hear us talk even more about audience building, the Comic Lab Patreon has what's called collections. And you can go look at them. If you're a Patreon backer, you can get these collections for free. And what we did there is we took our best advice on a certain topic. Let's say it's writing or drawing, or in this case, audience building. You can listen to all the shows where we just talk about those topics, either on the show or on Pro Tips, where we even get further drilling down on topics where we just concentrate right on actionable advice. In Pro Tips, we gather those up by category. And if you want to hear us talk about audience building, we've got an amazing audience building collection. If you're a Patreon backer, you get it for free. If you're not, and it's not a good time for you to join, you can buy that collection separately without ever becoming a member. And then later on, if you're like, these Pro Tips episodes are actually pretty good, then you can come and join us then. But you don't have to be a member. You can get all those outside of a membership. But if you want us to hear us talk about some real specific audience building strategies, which we're not going to have time to go into today, you can hit those collections.
Amen. And now let's move into the next thing, which is, okay, now you're active on Blue Sky. Now you're active on Reddit. Now you're out there posting. But what do you need to do while you're on these sites? What do you post? And for this, my friend Brad Guigar has put together a fantastic 4-point system called the 4 C's of social media. Yes. Brad, you want to take everybody through that?
This should encapsulate your social media. What we hear from people all the time is, I don't know what to post.
Yes.
I don't know what to do. I don't know what to post. And they think they post a comic, they get that far, and then they're like, I don't know what to do. What am I doing here? That's why we wrote the 4 C's. It answers the question, what are you doing there? What should you be posting? So there are 4 C's to social media: creation, curation, commercial, and the 4th C is kindness.
Kindness, yes.
Right? And we'll talk about that in a minute, but let's go through them. Creation, you don't have any problems with that. Well, you kind of do if you're a newcomer, because you post your comic, that's creation. But also creation is anything that comes out of your head. So any thoughts that you might want to share, any anecdotes, anything that's going on in your life. Remember, you have the right to draw the line wherever you feel comfortable. You don't have to talk about anything that you don't want to talk about on social media, right? If some things are private, those things remain private, and everybody draws the line differently. But you should understand that in social media, it is social media. You're expected to talk a little bit. You're expected to start a few conversations, okay? That all comes under creation. Curation, everybody gets this. Nobody likes doing this. It doesn't seem, nobody wants to do it. It's so powerful, especially for audience building. You're not doing it. You need to do it. Curation is when you repost or share other people's work that you think is good. It's not about you at all, except It kind of is, because when you're sharing stuff that you like, you're telling people who you are. Right. It's very simple. And this is also stuff that is good, really powerful audience building. Chances are, if you're a first timer, you haven't even thought about doing it, but you need to do curation. Commercial, that's when you say, join my Patreon, contribute to my Kickstarter. We're going to talk about all of that stuff in a little bit, but that's where commercial go. And then the last one is kindness. And I've got to turn the microphone over to the person I think who's the kindest person I know to talk about that one. Dave, tell us about kindness.
Well, thank you, you son of a bitch. I have to say, that's really nice. No, kindness is just the key underpinning of your tone, your tenor, and your themes online, which is, remember, as an entertainer, people are coming to you to find a respite from the rest of the world. And so kindness is also a wonderful underpinning to how you share your creativity and your creations, how you curate and promote and give the flowers to other artists online, how you spread your commercial interest of join my Patreon, hey, buy my book, hey, back me on Kickstarter, hey, come see me at this comics convention. All those things are underpinned and made stronger by a tone of kindness in your social media.
And when you've got kindness on the mind, I want to give you one more C to think about, and that's comment. You should be commenting with kindness on other people's stuff. This is kind of like a floater between kindness and curation. You should be commenting on other people's work or other posts, not in a, hey, I liked your comic. Now come over and read my comic, No Shoes for Tuesday, over at noshoesfortuesday.com.
Right.
This isn't an excuse for you to slide in commercial. In fact, you'll find that is very off-putting to people. People do not like when, and you can say, oh, well, I'm a shameless self-promoter. No, you're a jerk. Sit down.
Yeah.
Be a nice, kind commenter. Make friendly comments. Become part of the community. Do that kind of outreach. You'll find that pays off dividends like crazy in terms of audience building. And you don't even have to say anything about your URL. If you've got the URL in your profile page and all that kind of stuff, that's enough. People go look for it when they say, oh, what a nice guy what a nice person this is. Do nice, friendly comments with no reason to point back to yourself. Right. Just being part of the community pays huge dividends in audience building.
Yeah, as Brad has said elsewhere on this show, it's about knowing whose house you're in. Mm-hmm. And in that moment of curating and of commenting, you're in someone else's house. Your job in that moment is to promote them, is to give them their flowers, is to help build them up. A, because it's good for you and your readership long term, but also because that is how we all, as a community, as an ecosystem, lift one another up and rise these boats up. So Brad also has a fantastic acronym for how many updates of your creation, curation, commercial, and kindness. And that's the FCS system, Brad. What is the FCS system for social media?
We hear this question so many times from newcomers. How often should I post? How often do I need to do a new comic? And if you look around, there's lots of people giving magic number advice. And we hate magic numbers on this show. They'll say, you gotta post 3 times a week. You gotta post 5 times a week. You gotta, no, none of that magic number stuff is right. Here's because everybody's different. And you have your own unique system, your own unique circumstances that follow your creation. That's why we came up with FCS. It stands for frequent, consistent, significant. No magic numbers, no one size fits all answer.
Right.
You post as frequently as you can while maintaining consistency, not only an update schedule, like you can repeat it week after week, but consistency of quality as well, so that each one of your updates is significant, right? So no cheats, here's a sketch that I did on the back of a postcard. None of that. All your comics that you post have to be FCS, frequent, consistent, significant. Each one has to be significant. And if your FCS means that you can only do this once a week, then you start posting once a week. If you post good quality stuff once a week, you'll be amazed. People will wait all week long to see the next thing that you post. They'll be so happy when you do, if it's good comics, right? Doesn't have to be every day, doesn't have to be 3 times a week. If you post FCS, great stuff once a week, then people will wait another week till you post another comic. They'll be there for you.
Hey, gang, if you're listening while you work, take a minute to stand and stretch.
And while you're doing that, we'll tell you why you should join us on Patreon.
Yeah, because when you do, you'll get hours and hours of podcasts that we've recorded just for backers.
And exclusive Patreon posts that go even deeper on Comic Lab topics.
And you'll get access to our exclusive Discord server, a thriving community of professional cartoonists.
So you can support the show you love and get tons of actionable resources for your own cartooning.
And ho Nelly, if you want even more comics goodness in your life, check out the new drawing show that we're doing with our pal Kevin McShane over at wrongwayshow.com. That's wrongwayshow.com.
In each episode, we'll show you how to draw your favorite cartoon characters the wrong way.
Now, everybody, let's talk comics. Well, Brad, that was a perfect summary, so I'm going to jump us into our next one, which is that you need to start thinking now about building your mailing list now with a newsletter. Yeah. So this will be increasingly important when you turn to monetization in a few years. Monetization, boy, that word I almost got out right. Having a mailing list will be really important down the line, but you need to start the process now, because as people start to discover you in month 1, month 3, month 6, you should be sending those people to your newsletter so that you can capture them. Now, what do I mean by that? That means that people can drift. They can find your comic. They can love your comic. They want to read more of it. But people forget. People lose the link. They go from one computer to their phone, to their phone to the computer, and they forget where to find you. So when you capture them in a newsletter post, boy, do you have them. And what you're doing there is you're also sending out every comic in those newsletter posts, in those mailing lists. And you should also post a weekly newsletter of no longer than 500 words per update with behind the scenes content, special additives. Hey, who is Brad Geiger this week? Hey, what's Dave Kellett up to? To the extent that you're comfortable sharing, just like we said on social media. But the idea there is that you're building a relationship in an easy, low-hanging fruit way for these followers that are finding you.
Right. And you'll see that this works very much like a funnel, right? Dave and I don't have a whole lot of use for social media followers other than we can direct them inwards on the funnel, right? So we will both try to build an audience. It doesn't matter whether it's a large audience. It just matters if it's a passionate audience, right? We always say you don't measure social media by the people, you measure by the passion, right? You're going to funnel those people inwards now, in towards your newsletter and later on towards your website. But this is a very important part of that funnel that you can set up right now. Why do we suggest a newsletter? Because when you build that mailing list, that's something you can take with you from point A to point B, from here to there to the next place. All those people that are following you on Instagram, you can't take them anywhere. If they're like me, you can't take me anywhere.
You can't do a dang thing with them. But anyway, keep going. Yeah.
But you can't take you can't take your following from a social media platform to the next platform.
Right.
Believe me, we tried. But a newsletter and a mailing list, that's something you can. And then that becomes very important later in your career. Okay. Mm-hmm. But this is the time you can start building that stuff now. Start building that newsletter. Start, like Dave said, put the comic out, do a weekly newsletter where you talk about yourself a little bit. And all that energy that you spend should be towards building that email newsletter list, because that's something that's going to become very important later on. So start working on it now.
Absolutely. And key to this, the second part of that pillar system is a website. You need a website that you own and control, not something on somebody else's platform. Yep. A website that you own and control. This is not old or outdated advice. It's incredibly powerful, and you need to start planning for one right now, right away. Even if you don't have it at launch, boy, really try to get it pretty soon, because it's going to be a key part of your long-term strategy towards building and owning and controlling your audience. And by controlling, I don't mean as people. I mean as where you steer them, how you steer them. Yeah. So this is something that Brad and I feel is non-negotiable. It's something that you have to have, much like a mailing list, because you will always own your own website. You will always have that as a place where you can point people. It will be a central hub for all the things that you will do, for Patreon, for Kickstarter, for comics conventions, for books, for book signings, for all this sort of thing. It is the central hub and the archive hub for everything you will create.
Yes, it's your home base. It's the place that you're building. Again, you've been told by everybody around you who don't know their ass from their elbow that nobody reads comics on websites anymore. Completely untrue. Very much untrue. Provably untrue. When I get new Patreon backers, I've said this on the show before, I send them out a one-question questionnaire. Hey, how'd you find out about my Patreon? 75% of them say from the Evil Inc. website. That website, they are reading stuff there. People, I know this ever since I had my Reddit renaissance as well. I can see, because I'm using trackable links. When I'm posting, and I do a story comic, a long form comic that tells an ongoing story. Okay. I can see people coming over from Reddit to read the comic on the website, and then they come back and tell me what they read on Reddit. So I know they go, because I can tell they're following storylines, or sometimes I'll just say, hey, I was reading this on the website, or this happens too. They find a mistake on the website or something's there's an error that I need to fix, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, I got to go fix that link. So I sometimes I know that they're reading for all the wrong reasons because the website isn't working right, but I know they're using that website 100%. You've been told it doesn't happen. You've been told wrong. Okay. And like Dave said, you need that place that you can own and control. You can get kicked off of Twitter. You can get kicked off of Blue Sky. You can't get kicked off of your own website. And if something happens and you do need, let's say you do get kicked off of the social media platform that you're using for some reason, you need a place where people can still find you. You need to be able to go out to that next newsletter and say, hey, you're not going to see me on Twitter anymore, but you are going to see me over here. You need a place where you can regroup, that you can control, that nobody can kick you off of. Yep. You need that. People will use it. People will. It does need to be mobile friendly. And we suggest the Tucheki CMS system for building a WordPress site. And if you use Tucheki, your website will show up a certain way on desktop, and it'll show up as a vertical scroll on a mobile screen. You need to have that in place. This is also a non-negotiable. You can't screw around with that anymore. But once you've got that, and that website now you're really publishing comics. And now you can start that funnel going.
And for those not familiar, I'll just spell it real quick. Toocheke is an interesting spelling. So it's Toocheke. And that Brad and I use it. And as CMS, by the way, is a content management system.
Yeah.
So for those that are really, really starting out, that's how you spell Toocheke, and that's what CMS means. But yeah, I will 100% co-sign what Brad just said. And you've noticed now we've talked about social media. We've talked about mailing lists. We've talked about owning and controlling your own site. And Brad has mentioned that what we're trying to promote here is a funnel system where you first get people into your orbit. They're spinning around. You're bringing them further and further into the center, and you're locking them in.
Yes.
And Brad has a wonderful rule that he's developed for this called the 2-2-1 rule. Brad, what is the 2-2-1 rule?
This is what we're suggesting for people, particularly in 2026. 2 social media platforms, no more than 2, especially if you're starting out. Trust me, you're not doing yourself any favor trying to do 10.
Nope.
Dave and I have both been there. We're talking from experience here. 2 social media, 2 newsletters, and I'll put a caveat on that, and 1 website. 2-2-1. 2 social medias, 2 newsletters, and 1 website. Now, 2 newsletters. That sounds like a lot of newsletters to you. It actually, it's okay. You're just going to write that newsletter once. You're going to put it out in 2 places that we suggest. The first one is going to be a newsletter proper, and you can use Substack for that. You can use MailChimp for that. You can use one of the other newsletter software packages that exist. I've used Beehive. I don't recommend it. I would stay as far away from that as possible. There's one called Ghost, and I'll be honest with you, I can't see that being any better. But listen, those are all up to you. Those choices are up to you.
Right.
You need 1 newsletter that goes out, and then you're going to copy paste that newsletter, and you're going to put it, because you're going to want to start Patreon. We're going to talk about monetization in the next section, but you can set up a free membership tier on Patreon where nothing is paywalled. Everything is able to be seen by the outside public. And it's just basically your free membership tier on Patreon is the same as a newsletter. In fact, Patreon now has a special newsletter post type that you can post newsletters through Patreon. We are going to recommend that you do that. We're not going to recommend setting up paid tiers on Patreon yet. We're going to talk about that in a minute. But right now, at this stage of the game, you're going to take that that newsletter that you're putting out through either Substack or MailChimp or wherever. You're going to copy paste that, and you're going to put that also out on a free membership tier on Patreon.
And because Brad so perfectly summarized that, I'm going to jump us into our next topic, which is how to listen to your readers. You're going to start getting feedback as you're working.
Yes.
And so you'll get good feedback, you'll get bad feedback. But one summarizing thought that Brad had a couple years ago that we find particularly apt is to listen to your readers. Don't listen to a reader. Don't listen to the single squeaky wheel that will send you off on wild goose chases. You want to listen to your readers writ large, right, Brad?
Yeah, never listen to one reader. Always listen to your readers. And here's why. One reader is going to say any number of things, and they don't represent everybody. In fact, sometimes they represent absolutely nobody. They're just one person that's driving by, they had a bad day and wants to say mean things to you or whatever, or they're trying to be nice. Very often, a one reader comment will be something like, "Hey, I'd buy that on a t-shirt." And the other rule of webcomics is the first person to say, "I'd buy that on a t-shirt," is the first person to disappear when you offer the t-shirt as merchandise. It is infallible. Whenever somebody says they'd buy it on a t-shirt, they never do. You can make a lot of mistakes by allowing yourself to listen to a reader. So if a reader tells you, "Oh, that's terrible," or "I don't get it," or "This is a terrible story," you can't be dissuaded. You can't be derailed by that comment. However, you do watch bigger signs of readership movement. If you can tell if you're getting less engagement, if you're getting less traffic to your website, you can see big numbers of readers moving one way or another. That kind of thing you do have to pay a little bit more attention to. But listening to one reader, no, you cannot do that. You take all the compliments you can get. Then if it's a compliment, you listen to that reader because you need a little positive reinforcement in your life. but somebody comes by on Reddit and tells you that you stink, which is going to happen on Reddit on a weekly basis.
Oh, that's 100% going to happen on day one. Yeah,
you cannot be derailed by that. That's part of Reddit. That's one of those take the good with the bad. I hate it. It's one of the reasons I've rage quit Reddit more times than I care to talk about. But you can't get derailed by that one person. But you do pay attention to large numbers of readers and how they're behaving, right? That you want to keep 100%. Your eye on.
Because we always say, use your own creativity and your own heart as your North Star. But I have had occasions, Brad, where I was hell-bent on doing something a certain way, but I heard from 50, 100, 150 people like, oh, hey, the way this was written, maybe you didn't realize it comes across this way or that way, or hey, maybe you're missing a certain aspect to your story building right here. I did listen to my readers when they come out in mass, and in time, it makes you a better creator because you can course correct and anticipate where the problems are going to be. But again, don't listen to the one squeaky wheel. Listen to it when it's in mass. Yeah. And I will say one other thing, speaking of listening to readers in mass, is that as you gain a social media following, and we have seen this from all sorts of friends, don't mistake your social media followers for income. Don't mistake having 40,000 people on Instagram for having $40,000 of income on Instagram. Yeah. Keep a firm foot on the ground as to what it's actually bringing you, which is why we point people towards Blue Sky and Reddit and to a lesser extent Substack, because they have actionable results that you can see and point to, like, okay, I was able to get X number of people off the platform. Okay, I was able to drive X number of readers towards backing my Patreon or backing my Kickstarter or buying my book. They are provable in their results. And Brad and I were talking right before the show. I have a friend who has 1 million followers on Instagram and can't get a goddamn nickel from it in terms of like being, aside from occasionally an advertiser who will do this or that on her social media feed, she can't make it work. And so I don't want you to confuse having social media followers for having income. They are different. One might lead into the second one, but not even necessarily that, especially if you're on the wrong platform, right, Brad?
Absolutely. And I would even build on what my friend said a little bit. Don't mistake social media followers for income. I would also add, don't mistake social media followers for success. Because everything,
good way to say it,
everything that you're being told right now is that you need to build that followers. You need to make that number go big. Make number go up. Make number go up. It's all about, and by the way, how high is up, right? When do you finally succeed on your follower count? The answer is never. Never, because you'll find out very quickly that as soon as you get 3,000, you want 4,000. As soon as you got 4,000, you're trying to get 5,000. And the numbers, that friend of yours who has 1 million, I guarantee you, in her heart of hearts, she thinks that all these problems would go away if she had 2 million.
Yeah, you know what? I bet you're right. I bet you, especially after the conversation I had with her. Yeah, but as Brad said, the way you measure your readership is in the passion. And I can speak from this from personal experience because Sheldon, my humor strip, my standalone humor strip that's sort of gag a day, has a much larger audience. Well, which one sells more books and makes me more income? Drive, which ostensibly has a much smaller social media following and perhaps a much smaller readership. But dear God, friends, are they passionate? And the passion translates into dollars. Am I wrong, Brad?
Yes, 100%. Give me a small, passionate following over a large, dispassionate following any day of the week. Yep. I can take a small audience and do amazing things with them if they're actually interested in what I do, right?
Yep.
I can do amazing things. I'm not looking for building that follower on Blue Sky. I'm not looking to build the follower count to like 1 million or anything like that. In fact, there's a whole lot of problems that comes around with stuff like that. But what I do want is people who are passionate about what I do. That is where the career is. Don't get dissuaded by everything you're told by actually the whole world. The whole world is going to tell you that you need 1 million followers on whatever social media platform you're on. You don't. You need people who are interested in you. That's where the career is. Trust us. So now, having talked about audience building, let's go into the part that we know that you're champing at the bit to hear about: monetization. And we've got good news and we've got bad news. The good news is that it's absolutely possible to make money doing comics on the web. That's the good news. You can make money doing this. It's hard to believe. I know every time I tell somebody on the street that I'm an independent cartoonist who publishes on the web, the first question is, you can make a living doing that?
How do you make money? How does it work? Yeah, exactly.
They're still amazed that I'm not a syndicated cartoonist, right? And even though they haven't subscribed to a newspaper in over a decade, they wonder why I'm not syndicated. Well, because you're not a subscriber.
Right.
So let's talk about monetization. It is absolutely possible to make money doing comics on the web. However, this is so important to you. We really want you to listen to it. And it's the bad news I was warning you about. It is super dangerous to the extent of to your career dangerous, trying to start monetization in your first year.
Yes.
And in fact, not for nothing, we're going to try and get you to hold off as much as possible. First 2 years, first 3 years in some cases, starting monetization too early. And by the way, 9 years ago when we started the show, this was not a topic that we talked about, Dave. If you remember the first shows, we didn't talk about warning people against starting monetization too early. But then we started doing the show and we started an ongoing conversation with people doing comics on the web over the course of 9 years. And we saw time and time again, people who were trying monetization before they had done their audience building, trying monetization before they had improved the quality of their comics. And not only was it depressing, but it was distracting. It was distracting them from doing the things that they needed to do to improve. And then they look at their Patreon and they've got 0 backers on Patreon and they get depressed and it's causing anxiety. What do I do?
And it's one more plate to spin as you're trying to, as you're also trying to improve your writing and your drawing. And yes, it's all it's a hot mess. And it's much like, this is maybe a bad parallel, but maybe it speaks to me getting older. You know how, Brad, depending on when you retire and you start taking Social Security, you permanently in the rest of your retirement have less money if you start early, and you permanently have more money if you start Social Security later. It's one of the ways that they use statistics to up their own numbers in the system. But what I'm saying is, if you permanently, you might have permanent, and by that I mean maybe for the first 5 to 10 years, a little bit of a hiccup to your overall audience growth if you start trying to monetize earlier than if you just give it 2 years or give it 3 years or give it 4 years maybe until you start trying to monetize. Because in the meantime, you are getting a huge leg up on the improvement of your writing, the improvement of your drawing, the improvement of how you market it, the improvement of how you interact with your audience. You're basically doing all the core tenets with more intensity and more focus and more eyes on the job than if you had a distracted approach where you're also trying to monetize this thing that you haven't quite polished how your writing works, how your characters are interacting. So keeping a laser eye focus in the first year, the first 2 years, maybe even the first 3 years is what we recommend. It's the smart way to go here.
And I talked about earlier about having 0 Patreon backers. And I guarantee you there's only one thing worse than having 0 Patreon backers. It's having 1 Patreon backer.
Yes. Why, Brad? Why is that worse?
We've seen it all the time. Well, because now you're completely distracted and you're trying to do everything you can to keep that one person happy.
Remember what we told you? Got to keep Barry backing.
Remember what we told you? Don't listen to a reader. Always listen to your readers. Now you're just listening to Barry, and Barry might not even be all that serious about what you're doing. You don't know what's going on in Barry's head. This is all based on that, or the reason we spent so much time on audience building. We say all the time on this show, everything you need to know about crowdfunding comes from the name. First comes the crowd, then comes the funding.
Yes.
If you haven't built the crowd, you can't have the funding. You can't expect the funding. It's not going to happen for you yet. And getting 1 Patreon backer, and okay, now you're doing everything you can to double your Patreon. But I got news for you. 2 Patreon backers, that stinks too. Right? That's also bad. And you can see, and we've seen so many times from pro-am cartoonists who get themselves completely wound up, completely twisted up and distracted, derailed, disappointed, frustrated, depressed because they've started social media funding. They've started crowdfunding way too early.
Right.
And you got to build that crowd first. Then you can have the funding. So we're going to tell you, if you trust us, and please, I'm telling you, you got to trust us. We know what we're talking about. Don't start crowdfunding at all in any way for the first year. At least give us that much.
At least
after the
give us
first
that
year,
much.
we can regroup and talk about it. But at least for the first year, don't touch monetization. Focus on the comic.
At least give us the first year, but gosh, if you can give us 2 years of just focusing on the comic, that'd be great.
Please.
And maybe even 3. We're just saying, like, as you're starting, you don't realize how much of a learning curve you're still on in a good way. This is the time to be focusing on your comic, especially working on your craft, working on your writing, working on your art. And so give us 1 year. If you can, give us 2. And if in the biggest stretch, give us 3. So now you're in year 3, you're in year 4, and Brad, Comic-Cons are starting to beckon, Brad. What do we recommend for Comic-Cons? I'll tell you what, we don't recommend them, friends.
Don't do it.
Because they don't necessarily, in fact, I'm not going to say necessarily, they don't build an audience. That's not where you want to go in terms of building an audience. I could do in an hour in terms of audience building online what I do in 5 days at San Diego Comic-Con. And I've been doing San Diego Comic-Con for 25 years now. I know of what I speak. It is not the place I go to build an audience. It's where I go to take advantage of the audience that I've built and the merch that I have slowly built over the years, right? So, also, Comic-Cons, not for nothing, they don't have great sales unless you have a lot of merch that, and this is key, does well as in-person merch. And there is a difference there. Merch that sells well to an existing audience and merch that sells well to somebody walking by your booth and never knowing anything about you will pick up a book or a pin or a sticker because the thing is standalone funny, not based on an audience or a pre-existing story or a pre-existing comic. There is a difference between stuff that does well as in-person merch and stuff that does well to an audience that you have built on social media and on a website and your mailing list. So keep that in mind. And I will say this, it's very hard to make a profit at a show unless you can religiously control costs and kind of guarantee sales, which is why I still do San Diego Comic-Con. So I don't want anybody to be confused by this. Brad and I, writ large, are saying we don't recommend Comic-Con, to which I always get an email saying, yeah, but Dave, that's doublespeak because you still do San Diego Comic-Con. I do San Diego Comic-Con because it's right down the street from me. I can load up my van. I have family in San Diego that I can stay with. I have a bunch of pre-existing costs that are fixed and that are very religiously controlled. And even still for me, I will tell you, I had a great Comic-Con last year. It still cost me, Brad, I think it was, by the time I was all said and done, $6,000, $7,000 to exhibit and all my existing costs when I included booth, when I included Beth's Hotel, when I included food, when I included this or that, the merch that was made. It's incredibly expensive show to do. And I sell really well. And I'm still like, oh boy, that cost me a lot to make. Basically, if you think about it, it cost me, I think, $7,000 to make, what was it, $14,000 or $15,000 last year? That's a hefty expense. Good profit, but it's still a hefty expense. Now imagine if you do a show where the booth costs you $2,000 and you're not sure you can make $2,000. Well, what the hell are you doing? So we say if you're making, and if you're making merch to bring to a show, you are doing this all wrong. That is the wrong way to do this. And so Brad and I, writ large, over the last 25 years, we have gone from saying, yeah, do a Comic-Con, to going, well, maybe do a Comic-Con, to, well, maybe do these 3 Comic-Cons that we recommend, to now we're kind of like, I don't know that you need to ever do a Comic-Con unless you really know you can make a profit. And you need to show us that you can make a profit. And a lot of people give themselves a little lie of like, well, I broke even. Did you? Did you break even? Did you do the math?
That's the problem. You know, they don't do the full math. They don't add up all of their expenses from the booth to the travel, all that stuff, eating out, all of that stuff, the hotel. They don't add up the actual expenses. They might have spent $3,000 on that. And if they sell, 10 books and you ask them, how'd you do? They said, oh, I made a profit of $100. No, you didn't. You spent $3,000 to make that $100. You're still in the hole, $2,900. But pay attention, pay close attention to everything you've heard in this show, and you'll hear that if you're coming into comics fresh, you probably have a lot of misperceptions that are based on hearsay, right? And we've talked about them all, right? I talked about people assume that I should be a syndicated cartoonist. And I say, why do you say that? Well, that's what I heard, right? It's all hearsay. They heard that you're supposed to be syndicated if you're going to be a professional cartoonist. So that's what they say. Same thing with Webtoons. You can't you can't find a reader unless you're on Webtoons. Well, why do you say that? Well, it's what I heard. It's all hearsay. And Comic Cons operate on a hearsay basis as well. People say you got to do comic conventions. And by the way, in the 90s, in the early 2000s, yeah, it was true. And then it built up such a steam behind it that everybody started saying it. You had to go to comic conventions. It hasn't been true for well over a decade, but people are still saying it. So that's what you're still hearing. And people are still hearing it. So that's what they're saying. It all comes down to hearsay. None of it has any basis in the real world. Syndication, Webtoons,
Yep.
Comic-Con, none of that stuff adds up. You got to be a lot smarter and that's part of why we're doing this show. We're trying to get you started off in the right direction. That means taking a lot of those misperceptions and wiping them clean so you can start right.
And, building on that idea of hearsay with syndication, with Webtoons, with Comic-Con, a lot of the motivation that people have for going for syndication or for going for Webtoons or for going to comics conventions is because then they can psychologically tell themselves that they are playing professional cartoonist by doing X, Y, or Z. And I will say this because I have walked that walk. Mm-hmm. I remember being in my 20s, or no matter what age, starting out my career. I remember starting out my career and wanting so badly, Brad, to be a professional cartoonist. Yes. So I wanted to have the validation of syndication. I wanted to have the validation of going to Comic-Cons. But as Brad has so aptly put it in the past, it's like cosplaying as a professional cartoonist. But you have to ask yourself, what is the reasoning? What is the actual outcome that I can expect from this? And if it's not profit-based, if it's not moving your career forward, if it is just fake psychological validation, then you need to ask yourself, why are you doing this? And is there a good reason? And if not, then don't go after syndication. Don't go after comic conventions.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, everything has been a downer so far on the monetization talk. So let's talk about one. We're going to end on a positive note. And that is, you should be planning for monetization now. And here's what you can do to make sure that in a couple of years, when you are ready to monetize, that you're ready to go. And you haven't made any missteps that you're going to have to account for, right? And that is this. Start planning now for print. I know you think you're a web cartoonist. I know you think that all you got to do is prepare a low-res image, something that's suitable for posting on the web, and you're wrong. Most of the money that comes through webcomics, most of the money that comes through people like Dave and I, independent cartoonists working on the web, comes through print. Okay?
Yes.
So you need to, starting with comic number 1, starting with this comic, you need to be preparing that in high res. That means 400 DPI or higher. The size of your comic that you're working on should be bigger than what you're expecting to present it at in the last step.
Physically. And so what he means that if you're going to reprint it at 5 inches wide, be drawing it at 7 or 8 or 9 or 15 inches wide. Yes, absolutely.
Yes. And also, by the way, that's just a sneaky little trick to make your lines look better. That's
they clean up your line. Yeah, they do.
Yep, that's got a double whammy for you.
It worked for Schultz. It worked for Schultz. Yeah, exactly.
So high res, 400 DPI or higher, work larger and let it go smaller when in the final version. It means that even if you're working in RGB, you need to prepare for CMYK. Yes. And RGB has certain colors that will not print in CMYK, and you don't want to get trapped by that.
So RGB, just to remind everybody, RGB is the presented colors that a screen can create. It's red, green, blue, right, Brad?
Yep, that's correct.
And those combinations, when presented digitally, can present millions of colors. CMYK, which is how you're going to print as a 4-color offset, I believe is about 100,000 colors. I don't have it in front of me, but roughly. But
That's accurate.
you get the mathematical difference there. Is that if you're coloring something perfectly for RGB, it could come out muddy and weird in CMYK because those physical colors cannot be reproduced in print that you made it for a digital screen. So save yourself, future self, the trouble by going in CMYK from the start, maybe.
Yes. Even though you may have already looked into this and you can say, oh, I've got this print-on-demand printer that will accept an RGB. Go back a couple episodes and find out what we think about print-on-demand. Good place to start, bad place to stay. So no, you've got, if you are working in RGB, you can set up a CMYK profile so that you can see on your monitor what it's going to look like in CMYK. So if you're using that 100% green in RGB that's unprintable, that you can back off of that and adjust early. You need to prepare for CMYK in the first step.
Absolutely. You're also going to want to preserve any and all layers that you have in the creation of your file. There's a lot of cartoonists who think, well, I'm done. I'm done with number 1. I'm moving on to comic number 2. So I'm going to flatten and lock in comic number 1. Well, you've just screwed future you 3 years from now who noticed a typo or who noticed a color correction that they need to make or who decided by page 50 that the character is going to wear a blue shirt, not a red shirt. And now you need to go back and retcon the blue shirt. So there's a billion reasons. Maintain the layers for future use, sanity, and workmanship so that you can go back in and make tiny adjustments because they will need to have tiny adjustments right before print. Don't flatten your layer. And then the final thing is save in your native software, usually in whatever the software recommends. So for Photoshop, that's either going to be PSD file or a TIFF file. Brad, for Clip Studio Pro or Procreate, that's usually what the CSP file format.
For Clip Studio, it's CSP. I don't know what Procreate is because I don't have a lot of experience.
But whatever the native high-res, high data format is for your file, because basically you want to preserve as much data as you can. You're not trying to shrink it down. You're not trying. This is not the time to try to flatten and shrink the file. You want to maintain big files that you're going to need the space. It's going to either need to be in a Dropbox or an external file. And by the way, do both. We haven't talked about that, but preserve backups of everything as you're going. But anyway, start planning now. High res, bigger than your final reproduction size. CMYK, maintain all your layers, save in the native format, and keep backups, Brad.
So far we've talked about getting off on the right foot, building an audience, monetization. Now we're going to talk about what Dave and I call marathon thinking, because everything that we've talked about so far, we pulled no punches. We've given you no sunshiny outlooks. We've talked to you in very meat and potatoes, plain terms about what you can expect. And what you can expect is slow growth. That means that you need to be thinking like a marathon runner, not like a sprinter. You're not going to be monetizing right away. I'm sorry. It's even if you start your Patreon, so many people are like, well, somebody said on the Discord server on Patreon the other day that he did so many things just to prove me wrong because he was going to do it opposite from what I said. And then he was going to show me I was wrong. He said time and time again, I found out that this guy kind of knows what he's talking about. This is going to be a slow growth, even if you think it's not, even if you think you're special, you're not. So you need to start thinking like a marathon runner. This is going to be a long thing you're signing up for if you really want to do it and come out on the other side in a place of success. So Dave and I have a few thoughts on how to think more like a marathoner instead of a sprinter.
Yes. And here's the thing is that should you be so lucky as to have some exponential growth curve in time, on year 3, it's suddenly an exponential growth curve. Remember that even an exponential growth curve, the first long ass tail of that exponential curve is, boy, is it slow and steady. And then, it suddenly takes off, right? But the average cartoonist creating the average comic is going to have a rate of change that's pretty consistent over time. It's probably not going to be exponential. It's going to be a 3% plane of growth or a 5% plane of growth or, God willing, a 10% grade of growth, but nothing extraordinary, nothing. So persistence is key here because your rate of growth over time is going to be kind of slow and steady, but like the tortoise versus the hare, Brad, slow and steady wins the race.
Every time. And it's just all about persistence.
Yes.
This is all about persistence, sticking in there, keeping your chin up, by keeping that FCS schedule and keeping it going. If you need a schedule to post regularly, set a schedule and then stick to it. There's a lot of problems, Dave, that get solved by a deadline.
Yep.
Right?
Oh, God,
A lot of creative problems. I've solved them with a deadline real easy because you can kind of fumfer around a comic for a long time. And then days turn into weeks, turn into years, right?
Yeah.
Set yourself a deadline if you need it and say, okay, this comic has to be posted by X date, by Wednesday, right? And then, okay, now you post every Wednesday. And then once you get that good, then maybe go for 2 a week or 3 or whatever you decide that you can maintain.
In time.
But start with that schedule. If that's going to be what it takes to get you off your keister and creating and not giving too many second thoughts. Remember, perfect is the enemy of done. Sometimes you need that deadline to say, okay, it's done. It's not perfect, but it's done. Go on to the next one.
Right.
And all of that comes under persistence.
And now remember, as part of your marathon thinking, you're keeping in mind that this is a slow and steady race. It's a marathon, not a sprint. But as you're doing this, remember, we've also asked you to not try to monetize your comic. So what are you doing instead of monetizing? Well, you're focusing on what's working in your comic and what's not working and what's working and not working for the comics around you. We want you to develop your aesthetic in these first 2 years by studying good comics. What do the classics, the masters of comics do? How do they do it? What do your peers around you who are a little bit ahead of you, what are they doing that's working and not working? Keep your head on a swivel. Pay attention to what makes a good comic a great comic, what makes the comics around you work, what makes your comics work, and what made you stumble. This is the time, again, not to, and this is partially why we don't ask you to monetize for the first year, 2 years, or 3 years, because it's distracting from this core task, which is developing your aesthetic, developing your editorial eye on your own comics.
Yeah. And I would even say take that one step further. Dave says study the masters. I say study people that are totally doing this poorly. Study the scrubs. Study, and what I mean by that is, like, and you can find them all over, people who are doing comics that are not quite hitting the mark. Instead of just looking at that and passing it by, take a minute to say, okay, why isn't this comic working? How could I do this better? How could I improve on that? What are the 3 things I would do to make that one better? You don't ever have to tell the creator, you can keep this to yourself. It can be purely academic, but I would suggest, along with studying the masters, studying the people who are not so great, and then find the people, a third category that you gravitate to. They're not the masters and they're not doing it terribly. They're doing it pretty good. They're doing it very good. They're doing it amazing, but they're not considered masters, but you like what they're doing. Yeah. Now you start taking some time with that. Instead of just read through it one time, let's say you've got a book of their work, read through it one time for pleasure. Now read it a second time and go page by page, panel by panel. What is it that I'm drawn to here? What do I like about this? What do I wish was a little bit different? That's how you build an aesthetic, is through doing those 3 things: studying the masters, studying the people who are just horrible at it, and studying the people that you are drawn to, and thinking about, why is it that I'm drawn to this? Why is it that this isn't working? As you work through those questions, you're going to find your aesthetic develops along the way through doing those things.
Right. And remember that, Brad, who's the host for This American Life? Is it Ira Glass?
Ira Glass.
So Ira Glass had a really powerful way of describing this process of building your aesthetic and your editorial eye versus what art you create. So just know in these first years that there's going to be an imperfect balance of what your mind's eye, your editorial eye can see as wrong with your work and what your hand and your writing ability is able to put down on the page. So what I'm getting at there is it's much like a two hands on a ladder approach, that sometimes your editorial eye will be improving. You'll be able to see what's wrong with it, but your other hand on the ladder isn't yet ready to create what you see as wrong. And that's okay. I just mentioned this because it's part of the natural process of improving as an artist, and Ira Glass nailed it, which is that there is a two-pronged approach. What you see as being what you want to create and what you are actually able to create. And so know that there will be mismatches. And even Brad and I feel that, by the way, in year 25 of our career, is that sometimes my aesthetic, my editorial eye isn't yet caught up with what my hand can produce yet, or vice versa. Sometimes my hand makes a leap and my editorial eye doesn't yet know that that's good stuff. So I'm just being sincere. And so just be prepared emotionally that is an imperfect process.
Here's one that I really want to encourage you, and we've got so many ways that you can do this. Seek honest feedback to improve your work. That's a ticklish topic there, because you've got to be willing to hear that you're not as good as you thought you were. Okay, from an honest person, from somebody who you respect, a fellow cartoonist, a fellow comics creator, a teacher, an instructor. We've got two different channels that go into this on the Comic Lab Discord server. One of them is just dedicated to writing. The other one is a critique channel. Put your work up there and get some honest feedback on it, and be very careful because the first impulse for anybody who's creative is to push back and say, well, you're wrong. I'm not as this thing that you said is not so good. Well, by God, I meant to do that, and that's how it should be. You got to come in with a little bit of humility and say, I want to hear what you say about this. I want to get some honest feedback, and then have the courage to take that feedback. It's a hard thing to do.
I'm only going to put a caveat on this, which is be careful whom you are soliciting feedback from. A lot of people are like, well, my cousin says I'm doing XYZ wrong. Has your cousin ever produced one single comic? Are they a writer? Are they an artist? Do they walk the walk? So as you seek out advice that you should incorporate, my God, make sure it's someone at or above your level of ability and skill set and editorial eye. So that's why Brad and I suggest something like the Discord server for Comic Lab, and you can find it over at patreon.com/Comic Lab, because it's a lot of fellow peers and people that are further on the process from you. And sometimes Brad and I myself will chime in about, hey, maybe tinker a little bit around this, or maybe, hey, steer towards that direction, rather than saying like, well, my mom likes it, therefore everything's going great. Like, well, listen to where you're getting your feedback from. Just be aware of that, because you don't want it to be imperfect.
Another great way of doing what Dave's talking about is to reach out to other comic creators who are doing stuff that's similar to yours, and start to build networks, start to build friendships. That's how Dave and I met.
Yes.
25 years ago. We met because our work was on the same platform. We met at a comic convention. Both things we tell you not to do now, but it was different in the year 2000. And we built a friendship that is maintained through a quarter of a century.
Despite the fact that Brad had a woven belt on, we built a friendship.
I did. I still like my woven belt. But yeah, find people that you can whose opinions you can trust, whose opinions you respect, and who you can count on to give you the hard feedback when you need it. And also who is willing to be your cheerleader when you need a little bit of cheerleading too. We've been through that. We've talked about that on the show a number of times. Go back to that Kickstarter episode where we did a Kickstarter postmortem on my most recent Kickstarter. And there were times where Dave was giving me just honest feedback that I really needed to hear. And then there was times he was just kind of cheering me up when I was in the middle of the bathtub curve,
Yeah, and this is what we're specifically saying, focus on peers, because there's something incredibly advantageous to have someone else who is not only walking the walk and talking the talk and putting in the work, but they're doing it at your exact level of success, right? They're either trying to build their audience, or they're trying to do their first book, or they're trying to do their third book, right? Whatever there is, it's really advantageous to have somebody as a peer talk to you about what they're doing, what they're seeing, what they're focusing on. Let's say, for example, Brad, that I had made I struck up a friendship in year 2 of my comic with Jim Davis. Yeah. Well, what the hell is his advice going to be helpful to me? It's like, all right, Dave, when you're selling your 3rd animated show, here's specifically the comics contracts you're going to want to sign and not sign. Like, you know what I mean? Like, versus having a friendship with Brad, who was similar in my age. He's a little older. Similar in my age. Similar in my age. But also similar in outlook, similar in what he's trying to do, similar in hustle, similar in work ethic, and in what tasks he's trying to tackle in his career. We have been so helpful to one another, even in mistakes, helpful to one another, because we were peers working at the same level and could help one another out and it's one more set of eyes that's keeping their head on a swivel for what's working and not working in the industry, what they're trying and what works for them. It's an excellent source of feedback and of creative loop. It's great.
Yes. Seek out a friend, seek out a peer who can give you what they're thinking, what they're experiencing.
Yes.
However, if they tell you that anything that you heard on this show is wrong, fuck that guy. Get rid of him. Find a new friend.
Oh, my God. Brad Geiger, my goodness. Drop him like a stone.
Drop him. You got to get that person out of your life. And what a great way to cue up our 5th topic here. I'll let you bring this home after I gave you that little tidbit. Our final thought in this entire for anybody starting out at this point. You've made it this far. You haven't rage quit the podcast yet. What's our final thought?
Our final thought, and we mentioned that this is at the top of the show, and we'll hit it home again at the end, which is do it for the love, my friends. Yeah. In the first year, the first 2 years, the first 3 years, and frankly, even in Brad and my 25th year, do it for the love, because the love will sustain you through the hard moments. The love will sustain you with the moments where you start to have self-doubt, or there are hard moments financially, or your art just isn't clicking, or your writing feels like you've hit a wall or writer's block, or your audience isn't responding in the way that you were hoping for. In all the hard moments and in all the joy-filled moments, do it for the love, because comics are an amazing art form. They are so beautifully melding of writing and art and of crafting stories and of crafting moments and bringing characters to the world and bringing your outlook and your sense of joy to the world. Do it for the love, Brad, right?
Yeah. Especially because, again, being very pragmatic, love is all you're going to have in these first few months.
It's true, yeah.
You're not going to have readers, so you do it for the love. You're not going to have money, so you do it for the love. You're not going to have fame or fortune or any of those things. Let's face it, this is not going to happen that way for you. I can say that with a great degree of accuracy. But if you do it for the love, you're not going to be that upset about not having a large number of followers or a huge amount of money flowing in through a Kickstarter or Patreon. Do it for the love. And you'll find out that it's going to be a lot easier for you to get to that point where you do start to have the followers. You do start to have the money. You do start to have some of those other things, the notoriety that comes with it. If you do it for the love, it's going to be a lot easier to get to that other point because all that other stuff is way off in the future. Doesn't happen quick. None of this is quick. No. So do it for the love. It'll make it a lot easier to deal with all that other stuff.
And, we've largely focused so far in terms of talking about doing it for the love on your psychology and your mental state and your emotional health around it. But here's the amazing thing about when you do it for the love. It comes through on the page.
Yeah.
If you are enjoying it, they're going to enjoy it. If you're not enjoying it, they're sure as shit not going to enjoy it, right? Nope. The love and the joy comes through in the creativity. It comes through on the page. You make bigger and bolder swings, creatively speaking, in terms of taking risks. Your art sparkles more. Your writing sparkles more. If you are enjoying it, if you are doing it for the love, that is self-evident on the page.
Yeah. And we're living proof. We love doing this podcast. And we've been doing it for 8 years. This is our 9th. And by God, we're going to keep doing it because we really love talking to you about comics, especially when it comes to that point in the show where we get to say that you've been listening to Comic Lab, the show about making comics and making a living from comics.
Your hosts have been my delightful friend, Brad Geiger, who wishes you all the best as you start off in 2026 with your new webcomic. I wish you all the best. We wish you all the best. It is a joy-filled art, and we know you can do this, and we hope you stick with us to listen for more pro tips about how you can do it well. Brad is the editor of webcomics.com and the creator of Evil Inc. at evilcomic.com, and he's also the handsome new co-host of the fantastic drawing show over at wrongwayshow.com.
And my friend Dave Kellett, the co-director of the comics documentary Stripped, and the cartoonist of Sheldon at sheldoncomics.com and Drive at drivecomic.com, and another one of the handsome hosts, along with our friend Kevin McShane of The Wrong Way Show at thewrongwayshow.com.
And the Comic Lab theme song is used with permission from Andy Creighton at theworldrecord.net. And this episode was edited by Matt Woodard of Woodsong Productions over at www.woodsong.media.
If you love Comic Lab, you can rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, and you may hear your review featured on a future episode. And don't forget to give us a 5-star review over there on Spotify, where we are burning up the podcast charts.
And Comic Lab is made possible by your support at patreon.com/comiclab. So we'll go ahead and say that twice. Patreon.com/Sushi Train. Friends, I want to leave you with one last thought. I said towards the end of the show that what you should do to help improve your aesthetic eye and your creative eye and your editorial eye is to read the masters.
Yeah.
And Brad said, yeah, but also don't forget, you need to also read the scrubs.
Yeah.
Well, Brad, in retort to that, I want to quote TLC, which reminds us all, I don't want no scrub. A scrub is a guy that can get no love from me, hanging on the passenger side of my best friend's ride, trying to holler at me, Brad, I don't want no scrub. Thank you, TLC.
Spoken like a scrub.